Hello everyone, my name is Sandra Sawicka. I'm an agent at Marjack Scripts, and I have the pleasure of talking to Amy McCaw, about to be published by UCLan very soon. And we're going to talk today about publication and road to publication and different things that happen or do not happen while your book is published. So I thought we'll start by a short introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about Mina?
I can. So this is the proof. I don't have an actual copy of the book yet. But Mina and the Undead is a YA murder mystery set in 1990s New Orleans. And Mina goes to visit her sister for the 1995 Vampire Festival. And she enjoys all the creepy things that New Orleans has to offer. She starts working at a murder mystery mansion, which has all horror movie themed scenes. And she's having loads of fun until she finds a dead body at work, and she realizes that somebody's killing people in the style of New Orleans myths, and she has to figure out what's happening before she becomes the latest victim. So that's the first book. I'm hoping that there may be a sequel, but I'm currently working on another YA murder mystery, which is written using different media, so it's been quite a challenge writing podcasts and articles and all sorts of things for that.
I would be really interested to hear about how you get inspiration and how long from the initial spark of an idea, how long does it take for you to put it on paper?
So I tend to find that I have an idea a long time before and it stews in my brain for a while, and then I find I can write it. So this current book, Mina and the Undead, I went to New Orleans in 2012 and I was really fascinated by all the stories people kept telling me and the amazing creepy locations. But at the time I didn't have the writing skill or the idea that would pull it together into a book. So that stewed for a few years, and then in about 2016 I just figured out, oh, it was going to be a story about sisters, and then I started asking questions about these sisters, where they were from and what brought them to this place at this time. And as you can see from the room behind me, I'm really into pop culture, so that was why it ended up being in 1995, because the Interview with the Vampire movie came out, because I do a lot of reading around the subject, but with me it might be reading comics and lots of books and watching lots of films. And my new book as well, although that's completely different, it's still a YA murder mystery, and it's still very much grounded because it's horror. It's looking at a lot of horror tropes and different, drawing ideas from different places. So yeah, for me, this will be almost 9 years in the making by the time the book comes out from the first idea.
So do you think, was that when you started, was that a hobby, or did you sort of always know that your end game is being published?
I think from being about 5, when I realised that books were things people wrote, I told people that I was going to write a book. I think, and I'd always written stories. I've still got ones about like little rabbits and mermaids and things from when I was younger. So look, they've moved on from that. But I think that probably in 2016, when I started writing this one, it was the first time I thought, actually, this might be something that other people want to read. So I think that was a little bit in the back of my mind when I was writing it. And at the time, there wasn't much vampire stuff out. So I thought that maybe there could be a new wave of vampires, and I think I've hopefully just about timed it right that people might want that again.
Yeah. How did you sort of, from the finished manuscript, what did you have a plan, or did that kind of fall in sort of?
I think for me it all fell into place this time. So I'd queried something quite seriously before, which was a YA sci-fi, I suppose. And I really liked it, but I could just tell there wasn't something quite right. And lots of agents were saying they loved it, but just something wasn't landing, and they couldn't put the finger on what it was, and neither could I. So I think that was probably in 2015. And then I started writing this really seriously in 2017-18. And somebody told me about a program called Write Mentor in the spring of 2018. And I was in a big rush. I just applied to it, went for a wedding, and came back and I'd got a place on Write Mentor. And I think meeting a community of people was what really set me on the path, because all of a sudden I had got this manuscript that really needed polishing. And then I got a fantastic mentor called Marissa Noel, who did lots of passes of my manuscript with me. But I also found critique partners in my peers who were on the programme. And the great part was I had a deadline, so by September a panel of agents were going to see it, so it had to be ready. And then in the meantime, we met that July, Sandra, at and I gave a really terrible pitch, so I'm glad something came through it. Something came through it. I was really, really nervous. I just let out all these vampire ideas, and I think Sandra saw the potential in that, luckily. But the manuscript wasn't quite ready, so I sent it in September, and I think by the October I was signing my contract with Sandra. So I think Write Mentor gave me the deadline, the structure, and also the support. I learned in Write Mentor. I figured out that I had to write 1,000 words a day to get it done by the deadline, and that's still the habit. So now I've got a baby and a job, and a pandemic, going on around us. I'm still trying to keep that 1,000 word a day habit, and it doesn't always work, but I found that is just gradually chipping away at the word count, and keeping me accountable.
One of the questions I was going to ask you was, I really like debunking myths about publishing. So that would be one of them, I think, that, everyone says how solitary the job of a writer is, and to an extent it totally is true. I mean, you're the one writing the words. But it's not that you're kind of in a vacuum, that there is a lot of people sort of around you, and editing and giving support, and your friends, family reading, all your beta readers if you use them. So what other kind of myths come to mind for you? Is there anything you can think of that really surprised you, that you didn't think coming into this process it was the case?
I think what I found confusing was there were a lot of myths that kind of contradicted each other. So for every person that said, oh, you must stay off social media, write your book, concentrate on that, there was another person saying you need a social media presence, you won't get a publisher unless you know lots of people. I haven't had any formal training in creative writing. I'd love to do it, but haven't yet. So I think for me, trying to figure out what was the right path between all these kind of conflicting advice, and just sticking with the advice that was working. And for me, having a social media presence worked, and I found good contacts through it. And for now, not doing an MA has worked out fine. So I think figuring out sometimes the right way amongst the noise was got me to the point that I'm at now.
Yeah, what I usually say to aspiring writers is basically do what feels comfortable for you. At the end of the day, it's your book, and even critiquing, there will be completely contradictory voices there. So if something doesn't feel right for you, just don't do it. And same with the social media presence. If somebody's really good at it, then that absolutely can boost your presence and your sales and the publisher's interest. But if somebody's as terrible as I am, for example, I don't think that would make a change, Do you read, you mentioned sort of reading more of a non-fiction kind of stuff about the background and the myth. Do you read a lot in your YA, in your genre? Do you find it's helpful, or is it something that you have to put aside while you're writing?
Some people say that they completely stay away from their genre when they're writing, and I can't do that because I wouldn't read the things that I love for 2 years while I'm writing the book. And I do sometimes. I start writing something and I think, oh, that's amazing. No, that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And you've just sometimes like set aside that really good idea that you think you had, and then you realize it came from somewhere else. But I think that all of our ideas, all our story is the collection of our experiences and the things that are in our head, and some of those will have come from other sources. So I don't have a problem reading other people's vampire books because I'm sure some of that's soaked into mine, some of it intentionally and some of it maybe not. But yeah, I read probably 85% YA, but I try to read some other things just to keep fresh and infuse my ideas with something else. Yeah, because I think otherwise it would start to all feel quite samey, and it's nice to get a bit of variety.
And talking of sort of small insights, have you received what's your best piece of advice about writing books or getting published, whichever sort of side of publishing we're talking about? Is there anything that really stuck in your mind, Amy?
Yeah, I think for me there've been a couple of things, and one of them we've already talked about, finding your people, finding people mostly online, some of the people I've never met. They will not only critique your work, so you want people who are going to give you honest feedback, but also feedback that you value, because in the past I had criticism and I just couldn't glean anything useful from it, and I didn't agree with a lot of it. So now I've got a group of people that I really trust with my work, and also that I think will give me really valuable feedback. So there's that side of it, but also there's the support. You need somebody to say, I've had a rejection and it was a publisher I really wanted, or not in the case of agents particularly, because I signed with you, Sandra, really early on, but the last time I queried, there were agents I'd really set my heart on, and then they just didn't want it. And I think it's helpful to have an outlet and somebody to talk to about that. And also the stage I'm at now, I'm at the point where I now can't make any edits on my book, and it's really hard to know that I've let it go now and people are reading it. And I went to a Laini Taylor event, and I'll always remember that she said that the book isn't yours. Once it's been published and printed, it belongs to readers. And I think for me, that's really stayed with me. And every time I see somebody pick up my proof, and I think, oh yes, they're reading it. But also a small part of me thinks, oh no, they're reading it. What are they going to think? I have to think now, I've done with it. I've done the best I can. I've had lots of feedback. I've had sensitivity reads, I've had lots of editors. I'm really happy with it, and I've just got to let it go now. So I think the different sides of feedback, getting support early on and being able to let go of it at the end, I think that's the main advice I would give.
Talking about the sort of book not belonging to writers anymore, I think as agent, I can tell you that I also feel a sense of propriety about the books I represent, and so do editors. And one of the editors once told me that she was on a tube, no names given, but she was on the tube, and she noticed that the guy in front, like next to her, was reading one of the books she just edited and published. And she's like, oh my God, he's coming up to this really funny fragment, and he didn't laugh. And she was like, I was offended for the entire day. It's like, how could he not laugh? It was so funny. And then that really stuck with me as well, that there's obviously it's your baby, but there's so many people kind of invested in your work as well that will sort of take offense on like bad reviews and stuff. So it's I think, as well as sort of surrounding yourself with sort of Twitter friends and other fellow authors, it's good to have sort of publishing people on your side as well that will kind of cheer you on as well.